You don't rush delicious things as you tuck a loose strand of hair behind my ear. I rebut with the portability of a slice. I'll take us back to geometry and spit bars about angles and symmetry. Present counterpoints about crust to sauce ratio and the science behind semolina flour. All you need is your hands to enjoy the experience. No extra equipment needed, I'd say with a Cheshire Cat smile. Shall we agree to disagree? How cliche. Let's keep arguing until one of us gives it. All right, 5 more minutes. I just finished watching a documentary on HBO Max about menudo. Has anyone seen it yet? It's called Siempre Joven. Did you watch it already? If you haven't, you must watch it. Menudo, it's hands down one of the best documentaries I've seen. It's a 4-parter. But what I appreciate about the documentary is that it not only discussed just about menudo, but really the impact it had in music. And also it talked about the racism that Puerto Ricans experienced when they moved to the cities like New York and Chicago. And it really then the impact that menudo had globally, but also we wouldn't have NSYNC, we wouldn't have Backstreet Boys, we wouldn't have, even Boys to Men if it wasn't for menudo. Like really the global impact that these young boys had. And obviously all the things that happened because of their manager, who definitely abused them. But so I saw it recently, was completely enthralled. It took me back because I was all about menudo. And menudo was, when I came to the States, I made my mom take me to the movie that they made. I really wanted to see it. And it was like super cheesy and dumb.
I'm not laughing because of that. I'm laughing because she was talking about the documentary on menudo, and I'm like, why isn't there a documentary on pozole? I was thinking menudo, not menudo.
Now you need to come up with one.
Siempre joven. Oh, okay. That's why I'm laughing.
Yeah, now it makes sense. But yeah, it was a great documentary. I sat down on the couch the other day and just wouldn't stop. And but menudo really means a lot to me. So I did write a poem called Ode to Menudo. Not the slang term for money, the Spanish translation for often, or the traditional Mexican hangover cure soup dish. I was part of Menudo Mania, wore my Art Heart Menudo t-shirt and side ponytail as I waited in line to watch their movie, Una Aventura Llamada Menudo, in a claustrophobic new city called the Bronx. The Puerto Rican Menudo, René, Johnny, Javier, Miguel, Enrique before my theme, the original Latin boy band, gracing record covers with feathered hair and curly mullets, skin-tight, blindly bright primary colored pleather pants, satin shirts with plunging necklines, showing off a pictorial landscape of early pubescent chest hair stubble. I was home for 83 minutes, listening to my native tongue on the silver screen, with its inflections, intonations, and sing-song melodies. 83 minutes of forgetting why I had to leave my classmates, cousins, and the sunrises off the mountainside of Aguas Buenas. Sang along to A Volar, wishing I could hop on an air balloon ride back to the familiar. Thank you. You mentioned Tina Turner, so I'm going to read a Tina Turner poem. Didactic number 8, how to exit a room. I don't want to just walk out of a room. I want to saunter away. Sachet, really. Sway my hips with invisible saucy subtitles reprimanding you for looking. I want to leave a room like Tina Turner at the 1985 Grammys when she walked up the stairs during the last few bars of What's Love Got to Do With It. Her famous legs, shimmery red dress, and strut answering the very question of the song. I want an ounce of her confidence as she turned away from the audience, not caring if they clapped or stood up, not waiting for validation of her talent. Her naked back, brown and vulnerable, becomes mine as I exit a room, not caring, not waiting. Yeah, Tina Turner. And because it's called Mujeres Divinas, I'm going to read this one called My Love is a Continent. My love is a continent, an unconquerable land absent of manifest destiny. No man's footprints, fingerprints, or flags planted on this body. My love is a continent Pray and leave me ofrendas de chicharrón y empanadas with a malta india and white candle. My love is a continent compartmentalized by states named after my whims and lovers, uncolonized by anyone's demands, romances, or persuasions. My love is a continent historians have yet etched into books, unnamed by the best etymologists. My love is a continent, a sanctuary for women, un puerto para las malcriadas, chingonas, cabronas, jefas y sinvergüenzas. My love is a continent for all of the outliers and anomalies of this world, the forgotten ones who live in the gray. My love is a continent without longitude and latitude lines or vector points. You will not find my love on a map or Thomas guide. My love is a continent legendary like the pyramids, enigmatic like the Bermuda Triangle, unexplainable like your need to visit it over and over again. My love is a continent I never want to give away. I want to hold it in my arms and shield it from the brutality of the sun. May my love live uninhabited, uninhibited, for it can't ever be damaged, bruised, or burned to the ground. And that's what I have. That's what I got.
Ole. Okay, hello. I'm Angelina Sáenz. Born in Los Angeles, grew up in Silver Lake, Echo Park, and I'm happy to be here. So thank you. The first 3 poems are not part of my book Edgecliff, but I want to share them. I'm at the stove in my suegra's yellow chipped paint kitchen on Santana Street in Southgate. Comal heat rises and frijolitos bubble. Unmothered mother anxiety brings me here a few days a week to help with crying baby that I am endlessly nursing. I nap in twin-sized bed that smells like history, falling asleep to suegra singing lullabies to Amir, pressing his fat hands together on every syllable. Sunset signals primer impacto's daily exageración. I flip tortillas to their neoliberal bullshit, quietly cursing their contribution to our continued colonization. But Walter y las Estrellas intro music suspends exhaustion, depression, and cynicism. Apagando todo, I sit on couch, scoop baby into my lap, and wait for my horoscope. Leo, tú eres la reina absoluta del zodiaco, reina de corazones, donde tú te ubicas brilla la luz, el amor, la autoridad, el arte y lo refinado y el buen gusto. La máxima en la maternidad, tienes fuerzas espirituales que te protegen. Tú vas a vencer obstáculos y enemigos y que nadie diga que has sido amado si no has sido amado por ti, Leo. And for that moment, I am everything Walter says I am. Snack shop in the welfare office on Beverly Boulevard. It's not there anymore, the welfare office. That brutalist, windowless building is something else now. Why did we go so often and sit in that fluorescent light joint? All the welfare moms in tired chairs and all the welfare kids playing on filthy tile floors, acting ghetto in front of all those cubicles of angry welfare workers. The snack shop was the cruelest feature. It was the size of a welfare person's bedroom. Slurpees and rows of chips, cookies and candy, everything my hungry heart desired surrounded and towered over me. Pinche hot dogs, red and roasted, going back and forth under the hot lamp. I wanted to be the roller under them. I was so hungry, always so hungry. But who could afford anything from that store? We were there because we didn't have money. Fuck that place, in retrospect. Ode to Brie. I never knew you until Occidental College. There you were, leathery, chalk white cover, creamy filling. I took a piece. Do I eat the outside? I was too embarrassed to ask. I tried it. Cuero y todo. What a strange combination of custard goodness in bitter paper. I am since a brie connoisseur. I can take 2 triangles down all by myself, and I only mess with the high quality stuff. O thou ghetto Mexican who doth love brie, evidence that everything is possible in el norte. All right. So, Edgecliff Drive is about my life after my divorce, and the middle part are poems about growing up in Silver Lake, and it's not the Silver Lake of today. So that's what these poems are about. Sorry. Big boy, from jump you were the brick, then the cinder block, now you're the wall. 25 pounds at 3 months. Dr. Fleiss said, only give this baby your milk until further notice. At 9 months, Abuelita said, ¿Solo le has dado de tu leche? Sí. Hoy le vamos a dar de comer y beber. She prepared worn plastic sippy cup with water, tenderly peeled frijoles de la olla. Tú estabas encantado. In preschool, your teacher swore you were naughty. Your 2-year-old's body would run to hug your buddies, and you'd knock them down. They'd bawl their eyes out. A psychologist was called in to evaluate you. She told them you were beautiful, and to stop fucking confiscating your Thomas the Train that you kept in your pocket. Thick chose you, inhabits your broad shoulders. Thank you t-shirt shop on Fig and York that sells Dickies, husky size, the only pants that fit you. When you met Grandpa after I reunited with him, after 23 years, you said, Mama, I look like Grandpa. That's where I get my body from. 963 Edgecliff Drive. Single mothers on welfare oasis. 30 apartments organized around zigzagging staircases where we played tag, leafy patio corners where we put on puppet shows, bridges leading to solitary landings and pebble gardens, Mediterranean ambiance in the middle of the city. Josie screaming, Dona Rana my rampas, vowing to tell our mothers we were being naughty. Sparkling swimming pool overlooking Bellevue Park was the child care for an army of latchkey kids. Within 5 years, cement was poured into every corner that mattered to us. They started with the planters, then moved to the gardens, and last was the pool. Concrete landscape sealed our destiny of death and loss to come. Roaches weren't no thing. They fell out of cabinet doors, crawled across Saturday cartoons. We flicked them, shook them, stomped on them, put out raid bombs. I was unaffected. But the day we decided to throw away our corroded couch and lifted it to find a country of them, including a whole family of albino roaches, I was finally disgusted. There are levels of roaches. Levels of coexisting with roaches. Dark night, 11 p.m., your drunk friends show up at our house. Where's my mom? They can't tell me. I speed walk through Bellevue Park toward Jade Garden Restaurant. You must be between the park and Droopy's house. I find you, face down on the sidewalk, passed out. I sit next to you. I wait for you to wake up. Don't break or scratch those, cabrona. Sitting on the filthy rug, touching your vinyl for the first time. Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, Mary Wells and Teddy Pendergrass, the Shirelles and the Manhattans. If you don't know me by now, well, I've got two lovers. It's my party and I'll cry if I want to. Looks like another love TKO. This is dedicated to the one I love. Dry your eyes. There is no need to. Oh my God, I'm gonna cry singing these songs.
It's okay, cry. You can put more in there.
Sad girl. You look so sad. Did he break your heart? I'm memorizing the lyrics to the soundtrack of our lives. Thank you. 3 more. Okay, so here's the thing. So I have a 19-year-old son. His name is Amir. And smart. I read the first poem about him. He got into tons of trouble in preschool. How do you get in trouble in preschool? Anyway. Anyway, this poem explains it, but just this poem explains it, and then I'll just say one thing after. Okay. Your precious hands always need to be busy. Hot Wheels cars and elaborate racetracks as a toddler turned into 4 hours of daily sophisticated origami folding in the 2nd grade. So the first time you saw a video of someone handling a butterfly knife, you were captivated. Convincing me to buy you a plastic replica, you practiced spinning, snapping, twisting. The rule was, do not take it out of my house. The first thing you did was take it to school. And then we were in the dean's office and they just kept saying, it is illegal to bring a weapon or the replica of a weapon onto campus. The consequences are expulsion and arrest. Expulsion and arrest. Expulsion and arrest. What these motherfuckers didn't know is that you were on track to expel your damn self out of that school. You had already taken the SAT at the age of 12 and scored above the national high school average. They didn't know that the doctor who administered your IQ test said you were the youngest person to score at genius in just an hour. They didn't know that a year and a half later, you would be admitted to Cal State LA, skipping middle school and high school entirely at the age of 14 and get a 3.2 your first semester having taken 18 units. They didn't know. They never know. They just see brown children and all they can think is expulsion and arrest, expulsion and arrest, expulsion and arrest. So that's a true story. My son, that happened at El Sereno Middle School in LA. And, well, we're in LA now. But, my son is 19 and he's graduating this spring from Cal State LA, where Olga teaches. So yeah, our family, we don't know anyone like him in our life, in our community. And so it's a really big celebration for us that he accomplished this. Yeah. And they wanted to expel and arrest him. Okay. So I'm very dorky and I wanted to study poetry. I was like, I want to read poetry. I want to write about poetry. I want to write poetry. And so I enrolled in an MFA program. And for being a dork, I had a really, really difficult time there. So this is a poem I wrote to my professors. Dear professors, all of you fuckers, thank you for your email stating how disappointed you are in me and your workshop notes about how you don't see poetry in my poetry. I wrote you back requesting a meeting, and in that meeting, I explained I'm a single mom, I've never studied literature, I have homeless family members living with me, I do all my writing between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m. when my children are asleep. I teach kindergarten all day and then commute 2 hours to you. My son is suicidal. I am broke. I am a first-generation college student. My toxic family dynamics still affect my life. I've had kidney infections and my hair is falling out since I started your program. That you add to my trauma when you nonchalantly talk shit about my work, which is the story of my people, of my mother, of my ancestors, of the kids that I grew up with who ended up murdered in prison or on drugs, of my perpetual grief, and that whatever the fuck I give you is an offering of my life and sacrifice. You just look at me from across the table with your stupid face and say, how would I know all that? Okay. I come from a place where all we knew was to be ghetto fabulous and together. Before you start taking out your pinche black and white photos of your tatarabuelo de Francia con sus ojos verdes and your bisabuela Eugenia from the Tarahumara tribe. No, I don't own a single goddamn picture to show you of my ancestors. Before you pull out your map showing me where Fulano boarded his boat in the Bay of Biscay, arriving in your mother's hometown in Zacatecas, or the pueblo that 4 generations of your gente were born into. No, my mother was born in the Nayarit jungle to my 14-year-old grandmother, and no one can say who the father is. And that I may not even be a Padilla porque mi bisabuela era puta. And there is no judgment there. Before you tell me of caps and gowns, cheerleaders and jocks, and that you were voted most likely to succeed, no, I come from a place of flunking fools, 0.0 grade point averages. Before you share your tips about the bands playing in Echo Park, or the best ramen in Silver Lake, or how Hollywood is now the East Side. No, my muerto's blood pooled on your corners. As men masturbated in their cars on Sunset, and my mother lay face down, intoxicated, on the Lucille midnight sidewalk. Gracias.
Take some breath after that. So I like to read without planning what I'm going to read. But I did promise Vanessa that if she came tonight, I would find some reason to sing. So there's only one poem in here that has any singing. So now I have to find it. Da, da. Okay, so I might have to go to the table of contents. I don't know. Aquí está. Here we go. Dedicated to Vanessa. Bad, I can be funny. What I remembered yesterday. Oh, I guess I should have a little intro. So I was on a road trip with my best friend and her husband, and we were having this conversation about first loves. And so I was talking about mine at like 17, and my best friend was talking about hers at 16, and then her husband suddenly says, I was so in love, and I was 5. And so we were laughing at him, but he was like serious. He's like, I loved her. I wanted to have a house and 2 kids and a dog, and like we were going to be together forever. And then we went to a poetry reading, and then we went to dinner, and I was thinking about it, I'm like, we don't take that seriously, like what our actual first love was like. And then I remembered, on the road trip back home, that actually I did have a first love story from when I was 6. So that's why this poem got written. Instead of, I think I had a grant application I was supposed to be filling out, instead I was writing. What I remembered yesterday. At 6, I was the loner kid, the migrant kid, following harvest seasons in Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico. We moved every few months, changing schools, changing homes. I was the poor kid, the dark brown kid, the only girl with short hair and pants. I was the quiet kid who stared at clouds and blades of grass, who walked the perimeter of the schoolyard as if plotting escape, a child in pain with no words for that pain. Ileana was one of the pretty girls, the girls who would grow up to become cheerleaders. Ileana with the pretty gold skin, only slightly lighter than her light brown hair. Ileana with eyes blacker than mine. I don't know what she did or said, but one day the cheerleaders-to-be sent her sprawling into the dirt and turned away. I don't remember if I helped her or if, finding herself alone, she sought me out. But from one moment to another, I went from alone to not alone. Impossible that we had ever been apart. Little soulmate, mirror reflection, inseparable. We had one shadow. We spent every second of her exile breathing the same air, staring at the same clouds, holding the same wildflowers. She held my hand. I loved her with all the passion of my 6-year-old heart. That should be funny, but it isn't, because the passion of my 6-year-old heart was not the passion of my 17-year-old heart, or my 21-year-old heart, or my heart at any other point. At 6, a heart is infinite, devoid of want, devoid of selfishness, devoid of games, devoid of possession, devoid of armor. At 6, a heart is infinite. I don't remember time. Was it weeks, months? I only remember I had no warning. One day to the next, her exile ended. The cheerleaders-to-be took her back. I waited for her, but she never returned to our meeting place. I watched to see if she'd turn and catch my eye and smile her quiet smile, but she never did. Almost 40 years later, I wonder, did it begin then? This lifelong love of heartbreak songs
betrayal songs, abandonment songs, unrequited songs. My 6-year-old voice didn't know the songs I would learn later. Maybe I was 16 or 17 when that song found me. The song I didn't know would follow me always. The song I know no matter how many years pass without singing it. The song I've known late, early, tired, drunk, sober, heart silent, and heart healing. Probablemente ya de mí te has olvidado, y mientras tanto yo te seguiré esperando. Yesterday, I remembered the 6-year-old me and my 6-year-old heart, and I remembered what I had forgotten. The 6-year-old lives in me still, the 6-year-old in me that waits and waits and is still waiting. And let's do actually, I haven't read from this one in a long time. This is from the title poem, Cuicacali. Cuicacali was, it translates to house of song, but it was a place where young Aztecas would go to train to be warriors. And I love the idea that the place you would train to be a warrior would be called a house of song. So this is a very long poem that's supposed to encompass like 175 years of history. But I'm just going to read you like a couple parts, okay? Instead of the whole thing. Just a few parts. So this is Cuicacali. 1. Body of song. Never say we did not speak. Our tongue is an infinite tongue, strong in its ignorance of your American time. Its roots reaching deep into the earth where sunlight and the memory of sunlight live in the darkness. There are songs breathing in our words. There are songs breathing in the sunlight. There are songs breathing in the earth. Our hands are breathing with songs. We are inhabitants of a border inhabited by a border. We say Tejanos, we say Mexicanos, we say Mexicans from this side, Mexicans from that side, we say Mexican Americans, we say Chicanos, Chicanos, Chicanexes, we say Tex-Mex, we say indigenous. Some of us know the names, Kickapoo, Apache, Comanche. Some of us know, many do not, but we know, we know. We say here, we say there. We say there is no line. We say, we say. We mean us, the people. We mean we who belong to this land, to all our lands. We mean we, our hands working this soil. We mean we, our feet dancing on this earth. We, keeping it turning. We mean we, our blood spilled here. We mean we, equal parts earth and sun. Mm-hmm. Part 4, Memory of Song. No dogs or Mexicans allowed. No dogs, no Negroes, no Mexicans allowed. We serve whites only, no Mexicans, no Spanish. My mother was born in 1940, had a first-grade education, but she could read those signs. She remembered those signs, and all the places where those signs were not necessary, because she knew she was not welcome. In this land of segregated schools, segregated wealth, segregated neighborhoods, segregated graveyards, when my mother told me her first memories of language, she told me about learning to sign her name, how at least she didn't have to sign with an X, and she told me about those signs. My mother died in 2001. All her life, it seemed, she never entered any space without looking for the signs, explicit or intangible, that would say she was not welcome. All her life, she never assumed a safety, never assumed protection. 6, bones of song. You ask if the bones are heavy. Bones are always heavy. They bear the weight of a life, the weight of all the lives that came before them and the lives that followed. They bear the weight of blood and muscle and sinew, of grief and work and loss and time. Falfurrias, Brooks County, Texas. The words mass and grave live in the nebulous place where we put all the words we must keep at a distance. so that we can breathe and sleep and live, so that we can work, so that we can hope. The distance at which you keep nightmares, the distance at which you keep history, the distance at which you keep the stories that all these words invoke. Lynching, train car, Texas Ranger, separation, repatriation, border wall, death, murder, death, murder, death. And the word that is poison, forget. If remembering was not important, the bones would not remain. Bones would rot and fall away like flesh. Bones would liquefy, dry, and flake away. Bones would be the consistency of flower petals and dragonfly wings. Bones would bear no stories, no names, bear no essence. Bones would blend and sway as inconsequential things do. They didn't come here to die. They came looking for work, for the end of violence, for life, for family, for dreams. They didn't come here to die. How many other deaths in the desert? There are bones from the Gulf of Mexico to the Pacific Ocean. When there is dusk, when there is dust, you must ask yourself, how much of it is bone? How much of it is anguish? How much of it is now nameless? 7, breath of song. In the beginning, before the first word, there was a breath and an infinite moment of decision, to whisper, to scream, to speak, to sing, or perhaps there was no such moment, perhaps there was no doubt, perhaps there was only ever one choice, because the first breath was created for song, because we were created for song. So let us be song, shaped by song and shapers of song, carriers and keepers, inheritors and creators. Let us be song. Last section, 8. House of song. If I sing you songs, will you listen? I am a house of song. You are a house of song. We are a house of song. However we began, wherever we began, however and wherever we end, whatever we might have been or could still yet be, we are a house of song. Rage and love intermingled in us, and only the song to keep us, name us, make us, heal us, remember us whole. The song, the house, the place where grief and tenderness sleep, where remembering wakes and daydreams, the place where the daily choice to sing is made, is lit and set alight. This is the house where we sleep and then wake to stare at the sun and pace the earth and chant. We survive, we survive, we survive. And by chanting we live, by chanting we do not forget. We sing, we wail, we pour ourselves out of our mouths until sing and wail are not distinct things, until singing is wailing and wailing is singing. The land sings us until we are and are not the history, until we are and are not the bodies, until we are and are not the dispossessed, until we are and are not the hunted, the rejected, the repatriated, the violated, the lost. The land sings us so that we do not surrender, not then, not now, not ever. Not in this time or that time, not in this time of lost children, not in this time of walls. We cede nothing, forget nothing. The voices are here, the voices are with us, within us. The voices do not end, the singing does not end. The voices sing and the voices sing and the voices sing, and if you hear silence, it is only because all the voices have become one. It will seem as if you are hearing silence, but what you are hearing is a singing of all the voices in the universe, singing at once, with one unending breath. The voices do not end, the singing does not end. The voices do not end, the singing does not end, the singing does not end. The singing does not end, the singing does not end. The song never ends. Muy bien. I had my clock so that I could measure how much time I was using up, and I never turned it on. So I have a new book coming out in January, The Eaters of Flowers. And I wrote this book actually in 2 months. In 2 months, it was just poem after poem after poem. But I started writing it about 4 months after my brother passed away. And I was so completely lost. From second to second, I had no idea what to do. So I ended up writing all these poems to figure out how I was supposed to live and what I was supposed to think and what I was supposed to do and what life was supposed to be if for the rest of my life I was going to live with this weapon. Because as I told people, I had lost people. I've lost both parents, I've lost friends, I've lost others. But when my brother died, I have never and I never will know pain like that again. And so it took many poems to even try to learn how to live again. And I thought that I would read this one for Angelina because it's the first one that Angelina saw. And also because I've only read it once before. So, actually I haven't read pretty much any of these poems. Here we go. The Eaters of Flowers. Born soft, born to unfurl, we could be as gentle as flowers, hurting no one, making only beauty. We could be entire languages of love, speaking tenderly, humming and illuminated. We could be like the great beasts that move across the plains as if they were the skies, eaters of fruit and eaters of seed and eaters of leaves, eaters of rain and eaters of light and eaters of earth. But we are rarely gentle, rarely soft, rarely tender, rarely peaceful. That cannot be blamed solely on our being devoted eaters of flesh. Even as predators, we are eaters of flowers. We are eaters of time, eaters of memory, eaters of beauty, eaters of what was and what is to come, eaters of living and eaters of dying, even as the living and the dying devour us. Is it possible to be truly gentle before we have accepted we will die? And what is it to accept that we are as delicate as the flowers, that our blooms are brief, that we are vulnerable to everything, too much, not enough sun, too much, not enough water, too much wind, too much touch, too much pressure, that everything marks us as if we too were petals with burnt edges. Easier to dismiss the flowers like we dismiss all the dead, all the dying. Easier to say each one isn't precious, after all they're everywhere. What would it mean to pause each time we saw a flower and breathe? To take in the moment that doesn't repeat and the light, the scent. What would it mean to think of each other as flowers? If every time we touched with fingers like petals? If every time we spoke as if our mouths were flowers? Our words a spill of color, our breath a spill of beauty. All my life I have been thorn and root and wide, strong stem. But it is time now for a different life. In the time that remains, to become an eater of flowers, to become flower. To pay attention as I never knew how before, to watch how they drink in the sun, to watch the light in them, to listen to their gladness in the morning sun, like them, to turn my face towards light and dew, to breathe without rushing, to bloom in the time I have, to accept, to accept, to accept, and one day fall. I remember when it used to be rude to read from a poem, and now I do it. I don't remember what this poem says, but I'm going to read it anyway because I sent out a bunch of these poems for publication, and I just found out this one got accepted. But I can't tell you all about who because it's still a secret. But let's see if I can find it. So cempasúchil is marigolds, which are the flower for the Day of the Dead. So this is cempasúchil. My brother was born on the Day of the Dead. My mother, who didn't know how to be afraid of death, saw it, I think, as an auspicious omen, because he almost didn't survive to be born, because my father hadn't wanted him to be born, afraid that something would be wrong with him, as if we hadn't all been born more than a little wrong, into a world that didn't try all that hard to make us less wrong, less hurt. My brother wrote a poem about our maybe it was only one great-grandmother, who lived to be 115 years old, who was exiled by her family to a shack, who lived like an animal, my father said, because she was a full-blooded India and the family was ashamed, and maybe they thought if she lived outside, she wouldn't teach any of her descendants to be Indios like she was, as if they could will away what she was, what they were. My brother wrote that she must have cursed us, all of her descendants, living and to come with the same darkness that made our maybe only one great-grandfather, decide to set a time and date and then announce his death to his entire family, to order and pay for the food and pan dulce for the reception, and then I presume to dress himself and shine his boots and select the rope and hang himself at 4 p.m. My brother survived his time in the womb, survived and grew to be the tallest and strongest of us all, survived and was born without causing any pain to our mother, was born humming and content, and perhaps already dreaming of flowers and earth and delicious food and music and words and all the things he was born already loving. But I think it gave my heart a little pause. A strange little echo told me it was important that he was born on the Day of the Dead. I had to travel 2,000 miles northward to learn about altares and the Day of the Dead, built my first altar in upstate New York, and later tied what I learned there to my mother's memories of graveyards in South Texas. It was in New York that I learned the significance of marigolds to the Day of the Dead. I don't have my mother's or my brother's talent or passion for growing gardens, but I think that was when I started the garden of marigolds in my heart. And time and life converted those gardens into entire fields so vast you could walk from sunup to sundown and never see the beginning or end of them. And I wrote a story about a girl named Cempasúchil, and I tasted marigold petals and ate their color and their velvet feel and their histories of sunlight, and people say they have a favorite flower, but I don't think that's true. I think sometimes a flower might decide to claim us, to name us their own. My mother didn't tell me, or maybe she didn't know to tell me, as she only lived to be 13 years older than I am now, that I would need all those fields of marigolds. Because now that my brother is gone, every day is his borning day, and every day is his dying day, and every day is the Day of the Dead. And this means I have a tremendous need for infinite marigolds.
Could I ask a big favor?
Yes.
I need to get a couple of shots of you guys listening so I can intercut it with your readings. Mm-hmm. So if we could start with you.
Who am I going to be looking at? Look at everybody.
First look at
How about an encore for each of you?
A really short poem. I will do that. A really short poem. A really short poem from everybody. Luivette, you go first. Okay. All right. Look for yours, and I'll look for mine. And then we can do a short poem encore. Do I have short poems?
Oh my God, okay.
While you're looking, we'll look too. Okay, I have one small short poem. But I never read this one. Okay, I'll read this one. You found a short poem?
Yeah, eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
This is what I do. I just go around telling people what to do. And they still love me, and I don't know why. One of these days, someone's going to smack me.
Okay, I'll go first.
All right, I can go first.
yeah. So this is just so I can get
That's
and
fine.
both of you.
Okay, so we can look at it and they're like, okay, we're really listening.
Second shift. Canvas bag, teacher mom, I sigh through front door. My sons kick off their shoes and toss backpacks, and they fall asleep on the sectional. I start fireplace, Hostile MFA class in 2 hours. Manuscript spilling out of backpack reminds me. Change into stretchy pants and faded Obama t-shirt. Lady and Coco skid around me. I pinch up their shit and wipe up their piss. Review homework folders. Preheat oven to 375. Decide on chicken broth or milk to soften 16 frozen mashed potato medallions. Feet up, eat other half of leftover carne asada burrito. Outside, dense late storm clouds gather.
Ready?
Yeah.
Okay. The moon-like language. Driving home last night, I saw the waning gibbous phase of the moon and almost called to share its color with you, and how close it seemed to sit on my house. It's crushing my roof, I wanted to say in that playful voice we used under the covers in the morning when neither one of us wanted to get out of bed to face the realities of the world. But the moon, like language, doesn't belong to either one of us.
Short poem I never read. This is After the Sunflower, the painting by Klimt, 1907. Leaves, a multitude of green leaves, petals, a multitude of golden petals, green life infused with sunlight. You stand out, loom large with your violet-streaked leaves, your sturdy stalk, your wide frame, your bright mane. Though you are a flower, you are sometimes repellent. Your function of seed-making far outweighing your allotment of petals. Sunflower, I am afraid we are too much alike. We are not the rose, the lily, the glorious orchid, not beautiful. We are driven to survive and make seed. But sunflower, we have been given a singular gift. You and I, our faces follow the sun.
Thank you very much.
All right, so we decided that we would have a little moment, a little time of Q&A in case anyone had any burning, urgent questions that they had a burning, urgent need to ask. And if not, y'all better come up with one. Otherwise, otherwise this reading is no longer free and you owe us 25 cents.
I'll start. I don't remember her name. Angela? Angelina. So that MFA program that you did you end up finishing?
I did.
And can you just talk a little bit more about, I guess, what you felt you got from that experience? Regardless of what they thought you were doing with it?
You know, I had to decide that I was going to finish, you know, and I had to decide, it's like a recurring theme in my life that I was doing this for me. In the process of it, with all the feedback, really the negative feedback I was getting from my professors, except for one, I started to care about what they thought. I had never written that way, you know, caring about how people are receiving or what they thought about my work. And so it was like I went in, like I said, very naive, you know, let's write about poetry, let's talk about poetry, I'll write poems. And then it was such a choque, I don't even know, I still don't even know. It was like a whole academic thing. And then at the end, I just had to come back to myself of, hey, I'm doing this for, you know, I do this for me. And I write poems that are inspired by my community, and I'm going to stay true to that. And so that's good. You know, I feel like they gave me a really hard time for 2 years. And when I was finished, I thought, wow, I felt strong, you know, and I thought, I'll never care again what anybody thinks about what I have to say. You know, it's not for everybody. You don't have to like it, and I don't have to like what you write either. So I left with a very strong confidence. But I also had to recover from that experience. difference, for sure. Yeah.
I have a follow-up question. So I learned what I thought about poetry before my first book was so different from what I learned about poetry after the first book. So I'm always curious. I think we talked about this a little bit the other day, but not a lot. But what do you feel you learned from taking your book to different places and how people have reacted to it? As a follow-up to her question.
Honestly, I feel like it goes back to this idea of being true to ourselves and not seeking other people's approval or validation. Because I hear so much different feedback from people about what the poems mean to them. And I'm like, wow, that's interesting. That's I didn't even think about something like that, right? Which proves to me how relative all of this is, you know? And no importa. Like, if somebody loves it or hates, it doesn't matter, because someone's gonna love it and someone's gonna not relate to it at all. Again, so it's like I feel like my work is about that, what I'm channeling, and being as true to it as possible and saying it as precisely and as clearly as possible, and understanding that that's what the work is about. It's not about approval or validation.
Thank you.
I have a question. How do you keep yourselves from having like crying or like getting emotional when you read, some of your poetry? Because I'm over here and I'm like, oh, that hits right here, like I'm sure others too, right? So how do you all keep yourself from crying or like getting emotional? Or is it just like a process like you do beforehand to get there?
I think, well, one of the things I always think of is my friend Lydia, who I met 22 years ago. And she was in her, I want to say she was 69 or 70 when I met her. And she would read her poems. She was a poeta from Mexico. And she would read her poems, and her hands would shake, and her voice would tremble, and she would start to tear up. And there was always somebody that would go like, oh, you don't have to read, or you can sit down, or I'll read that for you. And she would smack them away. And she would be like, I'm giving you my poems, and I'm giving you the honesty of my emotions. This is how it makes me feel. So my shaking hands and my trembling voice and my tears, those are a gift I'm giving to you with my poem. And so because of her, I'm seeing vergüenza now. And and I think actually the first time that I read in front of Luivette, I was crying all over the place. Because I was reading from Blood Sugar Campo, my poems about diabetes. I cried for like the first 3 years of reading from that book. Everywhere I went, I was like, they're going to call me the Poeta Chiona, because like everywhere I go. And then this year, the first time I read one of the poems from my brother in Chicago, I was okay with the first poem. The second poem, I was like, I can't barely see the words. I can barely, but I'm just going to keep on reading. Because it's all part of what we're giving, because we're trying to put our emotions down in a poem. And if the emotions come out when we're reading, well then that's all part of the thing. That's all part of the gifts of the poem. So
I mean, it happens. It's gonna happen, right? Like I have a poem about my tia, and I've read it a few times, and when I've read it, sometimes I cry and sometimes I don't, right? It depends on where I'm at emotionally when it's time for that reading. If I happen to hear a song on my way to the reading that was a song of hers, right, that I attribute to her, then yeah, that's going to be fresh on my skin. Or if it's just a poem about my kids or a personal trauma. It doesn't matter how many times you read the poem, though. I don't think that really matters. Like, you could have been reading the poem for like 10, 15 years, and that 150th time, you can cry all over again. So I agree with Ire'Ne. Like, if we cry or if we start laughing or we have to take a break, an emotional break from reading, then that's part of the process at that moment, right? That becomes part of the experience, right? And that makes it unique. And I don't think anybody feels uncomfortable. I don't think we have anything to apologize for. It's cathartic for us and also for the audience. So I don't think there's a lot of preparation that you can do, right? Because it can come and go. Sometimes, like, you know, you said you read the first poem and you were fine. It was that second one. And it just, I always says, the poem will hit you in the face too, right? Like you wrote the damn thing, right? Like you know what the next line is gonna be, for God's sakes. And even with all that, the poem will still surprise you, even though you read it like 20 billion times.
Although I do want to say the real goal is to make the audience cry. That's the best thing. Making the audience cry is the best thing ever. I los ves yori. That's the feeling of like, you feel everything. I'm sorry, I didn't know, were you going to say something about crying? Or other emotions?
Well, I'm surprised we don't cry more because the level of trauma that is like in our bodies, you know, and that's ongoing, like even in our adult lives, if we're teachers and our students have, you know, lives similar to the life that we grew up with, we're still being traumatized, right? And so, you know, I'm surprised we don't cry more, and I think it's just somatic, right? Like I've never, I don't know when I'm gonna cry, you know. But I've also never sang the titles of those songs like I did tonight. Yeah, and then I was like, oh. You know, because
feelings.
Yeah, because those songs, like there is many memories for each of those songs, right? And of people that are gone now. And so I think the thing that I appreciate the most is the Ire'Ne and I were talking about this morning. I was saying, telling her a memory that I had, but I was like, but that was like 365 days a year. Like that was how I grew up with those kinds of difficult situations. And so I'm just surprised we don't cry more, actually. But I know for Edgecliff, I would post it on social media, like working on my manuscript and crying. Like I cried as I wrote Edgecliff, for sure.
One more burning, urgent question. Olga, I see it on you.
So, what do you do when a poem is calling you and really strongly, right? And it takes you under, or it takes you somewhere else because it's that strong, the writing of it or whatever it is. But you have to be in this world, like in the physical world. You gotta get up, you gotta teach, you gotta go to work, you gotta pay the bills, right? So kind of, I think sometimes as a writer myself, I kind of feel torn because sometimes the poem does call me and it does feel like another realm, almost a dream realm. And if I allow it to take me, I don't know where it's gonna take me. But then I have like these real life things that you gotta do. So how do you deal with that when that happens?
I have a poem that's called Why Were You Late? Because I was writing a poem. And sometimes, literally, I'm walking out the door and I just have to write it. And I'll dump all my stuff. But of course, it's not something that's long, right? But then I will go to wherever I'm going, like volada. Like in that other world, and then I'm looking at everyone like smiling, like I'm not really here. So yeah, and also, I don't know about you, it helps me to say to myself, I'm not going to share this. Yeah, the really deep and hard ones, I need to be able to say that to myself. Otherwise, it won't get down because I'm so vulnerable in it. And then later I'll give myself permission. But it helps too to kind of get it because that's another vulnerability of like, then I'm going to put this out in the world, right?
I think I miss a lot of exits on the freeway. It's happened. Like, that's legitimately has happened, that I'm thinking about the poem and I'm driving and I completely have missed like exits. Going like, oh shit, like I was supposed to get off like 2 exits ago because I was somewhere else, right? Or as a teacher, you know, like I should be lesson planning or I should be grading. I should be doing something else like related to my job, like you said. And I'm sitting there at my desk writing poems. I also get very much, and this has happened where I get obsessed with the revision of a poem. Like the poem is written, but I know it could be better. So I become very much obsessed with like, how can I do that? And it's constantly on my brain. As I'm going to work, as I'm going to the supermarket, while I'm at the supermarket pumping gas, like it's still living there until, and then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, I got it. I have to write this down. And luckily, you know, we have our phones now. And like, there's a note section on my phone that has, and I don't think anybody, I've never shared that with anybody, but it has over, at this point, probably over 50 poems, like ideas and titles, whatever, just that are constantly like brand new things I haven't written. And that's very private and I'm not showing it to anybody yet. But I hear what you're saying, because sometimes you're not really here. You're living with this poem, right? It's still here. It's somewhere, right? I don't know how to explain it either, but it's like it's with you, and you do kind of like you mess up what you're cooking because your brain is somewhere else. You forget that's on the stove. You forget what's in the laundry basket. So it has happened. I don't think that I've established it. I don't think I've gotten a balance, unfortunately. I think it happens to all of us who are creative, that you start living, your art is living with you on a regular basis. Whatever that creativity is, right? Whether you're a visual artist, written artist, whatever, musician. So I have not struck balance. Sorry.
I don't think we're supposed to. I think
That's good. That's good.
no, because I was telling somebody, like, you know, you ask the universe for inspiration and for creativity and all that stuff, and then it comes and gives it to you, and you tell it, no, not right now.
Yeah.
Like, that's so disrespectful. Like, you need to take a moment. Be like, the universe gave me this. I need to receive it. I need to jot it on my phone. I need to write something down, or I need to just sit here for a second and just like download this idea enough so that I'll remember it. And so it's like it's disrespecting the universe if you don't stop for a second. It's weird because I think before my brother died, I never had any priority for sleeping. And so I think that's why I got to do a lot of writing. But I also constantly wrote everywhere, you know, grocery store, pharmacy, line, on the bus, at work, you know, in between doing things at work, just like all the time. Since he died, my life is very different. And it's interesting to me that the huge priority has become making sure that I have time to write and time to do nothing. That I have time to just sit there and receive. And that I have time to just sit there, stare out the wall, stare at the window, that just sit. Because I never had time for that before. And it's amazing to me now to realize that I can spend 12 hours doing nothing. And the next thing you know, and I'm there writing. And then the other thing too is that because now I don't have anyone I have to take care of and it's just me, I have let myself a few times wake up or still be awake at 1 or 2 in the morning and start writing. And I'm like, I'm going to hurt so much tomorrow. Tomorrow at work is going to hurt so bad. But I let myself do it because now I can. Before I was like, I have to work. I have to get up and make breakfast and do this. Now I'm like, I can have a shitty day at work and just like do whatever shitty amount of work I do. I want to write right now. And so I've had a few of those and I'm like, it feels painful but luxurious at the same time. So I'm very curious about what like this new life where I'm setting so many boundaries, how amazing that's been to being able to write and to do things. But it's like, actually no, it's not that hard. It's not that hard to tell people no. It's actually really easy. I like it a lot. And I want to do more of it. I think that's it. Y'all have anything? No? All right, thank you. Okay. So y'all, we're available to sign stuff. Y'all want to sign stuff. And Vanessa and Olga, you're on a schedule.
On a schedule.